She sent the message to the wrong number. The reply came almost instantly. "Don't move, I'm coming." Emily Carter stared at the cracked screen of her phone, her breath hitching as pain radiated up her right arm in violent pulses. It lay twisted against her ribs, useless, wrong, like it no longer belonged to her body. Blood soaked through the sleeve of her sweater where shattered glass had torn into skin. The bathroom floor was freezing, porcelain biting into her spine, but she barely registered it. All she could feel was the break, the snap, the moment everything inside her had given way. The fist hit the door again. "Emily, baby, open up. Let me help you." Her husband's voice slid under the door like poison. Calm, almost gentle. The same voice he'd used when he put a ring on her finger 5 years ago by the river, promising forever. The same man who had grabbed her arm with both hands and twisted, until something inside cracked like dry wood. "I didn't mean to hurt you. You startled me." She stayed silent. Silence made him angry. Words made him worse. Her phone shook in her left hand as she unlocked it, vision blurring. She needed her brother. Mark would come. Mark always came. Her thumb slipped across the screen, smearing blood as names blurred together. She tapped the first contact that looked right and typed with one trembling finger. "He broke my arm. I think it's shattered. He won't let me leave. Please help. 20,453 Westfield Apartments, Unit 17. She hit send just as the door rattled harder. "Emily, I'm counting to 3. Her phone buzzed. "Who is this?" Her stomach dropped. Wrong number. Panic flooded her chest. She typed again, faster, messier. "Wrong number, I'm sorry, please. My husband broke my arm. He's breaking the door. I need help." 3 seconds passed. Then the reply came. "Don't move. I'm coming. Confirm address." Her breath caught. She didn't know who this was. Didn't know if it was a joke, a monster, or nothing at all. But it was all she had. 20,453 Westfield Apartments, Unit 17. Please hurry. Please don't call the police. Stay hidden. 8 minutes. 8 minutes. She wouldn't survive 8 minutes. The lock splintered. Emily, last chance. Her phone buzzed once more. Hold on. The door exploded inward. The door didn't explode. It didn't splinter or crack or give way under brute force the way Emily expected. 1 second it was there, the cheap wooden barrier separating her from the man who had already broken her arm, and the next second it was simply gone, lifted clean from its hinges and laid aside with quiet, surgical precision, as if violence didn't need theatrics to be devastating. Her husband froze. The gun was already in his hand when the first man stepped inside. He moved like a shadow, dressed head to toe in black tactical gear that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. His face was unreadable, his eyes scanning the apartment with the detached efficiency of someone clearing a room that might already be full of corpses. Another man followed him, then another. They didn't rush. They didn't speak. They simply positioned themselves with exacting purpose, blocking exits, controlling angles, turning the small apartment into a sealed box. None of them looked at Emily. They were waiting. Then he entered. Dante Hollow didn't hurry. He stepped over the ruined threshold as though the broken door had never existed, his polished shoes crunching softly against scattered debris. He wore a charcoal suit that looked custom-tailored down to the last millimeter, not a wrinkle out of place, despite the chaos surrounding him. The fabric moved with him, fluid and expensive, catching the light in subtle ways that made Emily's chest tighten for reasons she didn't fully understand. His presence changed the air. The room felt smaller, heavier, like the walls themselves had leaned inward to listen. He was tall, broad-shouldered without being bulky, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested absolute confidence. His face was sharp and coldly handsome, the kind of beauty that didn't invite admiration so much as command attention. But it was his eyes that locked Emily in place. Black, flat, empty of warmth. Eyes that didn't rage or threaten or beg. Eyes that assessed. Dante's gaze flicked once toward Emily. Just once. Long enough to register the blood, the twisted arm, the way she was half-collapsed against the bathroom wall. Something unreadable passed through his expression, then vanished. His attention shifted to her husband. He looked at him the way someone might look at a malfunctioning machine. Not with anger, not with disgust, just with mild irritation. "Get out of my house," her husband snarled, lifting the gun higher, his knuckles white. His other hand was still buried in Emily's hair, yanking her head back painfully. "I'm a police officer. You have no idea what you're walking into." Dante stopped 3 steps inside the living room. He tilted his head slightly, as if considering the statement. When he spoke, his voice was calm, low, touched with the faintest trace of an accent that made every word sound deliberate. "You won't shoot." Her husband laughed, sharp and unhinged. "You think I will?" Dante smiled. It wasn't wide, it wasn't cruel. It was thin and precise, a controlled movement of muscle that carried no humor at all, just certainty. "You won't," he repeated, "because you're already dead. You just don't know it yet." The gun shook. "I'll kill her," the man snapped, fingers tightening reflexively in Emily's hair. "I swear to God." He never finished the sentence. Dante moved. Emily didn't see him cross the room. There was no dramatic lunge, no cinematic blur. One moment Dante was standing near the doorway, and the next he was close enough that Emily could smell him, cedar and smoke and something darker beneath it. His hand closed around her husband's wrist with terrifying speed. There was a sound. Wet, organic, wrong. The scream came a half-second later. The gun clattered to the floor as the man collapsed, clutching his arm. His wrist hung at an impossible angle, bone pressing visibly beneath skin, mirroring the grotesque wrongness of Emily's own injury. Poetic. Efficient. Final. Dante released him without a word, stepping back as though he'd simply brushed against something unpleasant. The man crumpled to the floor, sobbing, shock draining the color from his face as pain caught up to reality. Dante didn't look at him again. He turned to Emily. For the first time since he'd entered the apartment, his expression shifted. It didn't soften. Nothing about him was soft, but the emptiness in his eyes gained dimension, focus narrowing as he took her in fully now. "Can you stand?" The question was meant only for her. His voice dropped slightly, intimate in its restraint. Emily tried. The moment she put weight on her legs, they buckled. The adrenaline that had kept her upright drained away all at once, leaving only pain, exhaustion, and the surreal realization that a stranger had just shattered her husband's arm with casual ease. Dante didn't wait for her to answer. He shrugged out of his coat, the movement smooth and unhurried, and draped it over her shoulders. Cashmere, midnight gray, heavy with warmth and the lingering imprint of his body. The scent hit her immediately, expensive cologne layered over gunpowder and something metallic she didn't want to think about. It swallowed her, shielding her from the room, from the blood, from the man sobbing on the floor. Then Dante bent down. Emily's breath caught as one arm slid beneath her knees, the other around her back. He lifted her effortlessly as though she weighed nothing at all. She should have been terrified. This man was a stranger, a criminal, something far worse. But the fear never fully arrived. It drowned beneath a wave of something else. Relief, shock, and beneath that a dangerous, unfamiliar sensation. Safety. Dante adjusted his grip carefully, deliberately avoiding her broken arm. His jaw tightened just slightly as he compensated, a small detail that lodged itself painfully in Emily's chest. "You're safe now," he murmured. The words should have sounded impossible. They didn't. As he carried her out of the apartment, past the silent line of men in black, past the space where her front door used to be, Emily caught one last glimpse of her husband curled on the floor, clutching his shattered wrist, his face twisted in terror and disbelief. For the first time since she'd married him, he looked small. Dante didn't look back. The night air outside was sharp and cold. She barely registered it before she was lowered gently into the backseat of a black car that smelled like leather and something antiseptic. A door closed. The world narrowed. As the vehicle pulled away, Emily's head tipped against Dante's chest, exhaustion dragging her under. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, slow and controlled, as if nothing about tonight had disrupted him at all. She clung to that rhythm, to the impossible idea that the monster holding her felt safer than the man she'd sworn her life to. And that terrified her more than anything else ever had. Emily woke to silence, so complete it felt artificial. Not the hollow quiet of her apartment at night, where pipes whispered and neighbors shifted through thin walls. This silence was controlled, intentional, the kind that existed only in places where nothing was allowed to happen without permission. Light poured over her. Real light, warm and golden, flooding the room through glass that stretched impossibly high. For a disoriented second, she thought she was dreaming, that she had finally lost consciousness in the backseat of that car, and her mind was filling in details it had no right to imagine. Then she tried to move. Her right arm didn't scream. That alone made her heart race. She lifted her head slowly, breath shallow, eyes darting down to her arm. It was encased in something sleek and black, a brace that looked more like aerospace equipment than medical gear. Carbon fiber hugged her limb with precise support, subtle blue lights pulsing softly along its edge. The pain that should have been there was muted, distant, reduced to a dull throb that felt almost borrowed. She swallowed hard. Where am I? The bed beneath her was enormous, dressed in silk sheets the color of champagne. They slid cool and smooth beneath her fingers as she pushed herself upright, her body protesting in places that had nothing to do with her arm. Her head swam. Her mouth tasted faintly of antiseptic, and something bitter she recognized as a sedative. The room around her slowly came into focus. Clean lines, expensive minimalism, white walls broken by dark wood accents and steel, and those windows. God! The entire wall was glass, offering an uninterrupted view of the city spread out below like a living map. Streets shimmered with movement, tiny ribbons of traffic far beneath her. She had no idea how high she was, only that the height made her stomach flip. Too high to jump quickly, a traitorous thought whispered. She shoved it away. Emily swung her legs over the side of the bed, her bare feet meeting heated marble. She stood carefully, testing her balance. The room smelled faintly of cedar and something clean, something sharp, familiar. Him. She realized then that she wasn't wearing her clothes. Instead, she wore black silk pajamas that fit her body perfectly, soft and light against her skin. Someone had changed her while she slept. The intimacy of it should have sent panic clawing up her throat. Instead, it left her hollow. She crossed the room slowly, drawn toward the windows. The city looked unreal from this height, distant and untouchable. She pressed her palm against the glass, grounding herself in its cool solidity. This wasn't a hotel. This was a fortress. A sound behind her made her spin. A man stood near the entrance to the room, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark suit that screamed money and authority. His face was blank, professional, but his stance was deliberate, subtly blocking the only visible exit. "I need to leave," Emily said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Miss Carter." "Miss." The word landed harder than she expected. Not Mrs., not his name, just her own. "You can't keep me here." She moved toward him anyway, testing. He didn't flinch, didn't reach for a weapon. He simply existed as an immovable barrier, polite and absolute. "You should sit down," he said calmly. "Mr. Hollow will want to speak with you." "I don't care what Mr. Hollow wants." "You care very much what I want." The voice came from behind her. Emily's heart stuttered. She turned slowly. Dante Hollow stood in the doorway she hadn't noticed before, a glass of tea in his hand. He wore different clothes now. Charcoal slacks, a black shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with ink that disappeared beneath the fabric. He looked less like a businessman, more like the truth. "Dangerous." "Your arm," he said, gesturing lightly with the tea. "The surgeon says you'll regain full mobility in 6 weeks, earlier if you're disciplined with physical therapy." "You had no right," she snapped. "I had every right." He stepped closer, and Emily hated herself for not stepping back. The guard was gone. She realized that belatedly. The room suddenly felt too large, too empty, with just the two of them suspended above the city. "You texted me for help," Dante continued. "I helped. I texted the wrong number." A faint smile touched his mouth, barely there. "Lucky for you. I want to go home." Dante set the tea down with careful precision on a nearby table. "You don't have a home anymore." The words were calm, factual, final. "Outside these walls, your husband will find you. His badge gives him access to cameras, databases, resources you can't imagine. And when he finds you, he will kill you. Not quickly. Not cleanly." Emily's knees weakened. She sank onto the nearest chair, leather soft enough to feel obscene, trying to process what he was saying. "That's not possible." "It's not only possible, it's done." He walked toward the windows, the city framing him like a throne. "He filed a missing persons report an hour ago. He's the grieving husband leading the search." Her pulse roared in her ears. "Inside this building," Dante continued, turning back to her, "you are untouchable. No law enforcement enters without my consent. No one asks questions I don't allow. You're protected. Mine. I'm not anyone's." The words sounded weak, even to her own ears. "Then choose." He spread his hand slightly, a gesture that felt almost generous. "Outside you are prey. In here you are safe." Emily looked at him, really looked. At the man who had shattered bones without hesitation. At the man who had wrapped her in his coat like it meant something. At the glass tower surrounding them, beautiful and impenetrable. She understood then. She hadn't escaped one cage. She'd been moved into another. And the most terrifying part was how much safer this one felt. Dante's eyes lingered on her, sharp and unblinking. "Rest," he said finally. "We'll talk later." As he turned to leave, Emily realized something cold and undeniable had settled in her chest. The night she sent that text, her life hadn't been saved. It had been claimed. Time behaved differently inside Dante Hollow's tower. Emily noticed it on the 3rd day. Morning arrived without sound. No traffic, no sirens, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. The light simply shifted, sliding slowly across the marble floors and glass walls like a silent command. Meals appeared without warning. Fresh, perfectly balanced. Tailored not just to nutrition but to her preferences, preferences she didn't remember sharing. She didn't ask how they knew. She already suspected the answer. Her arm healed faster than it should have. Daily visits from a private physical therapist, a woman who spoke little and watched everything, left Emily sore but improving at a pace that felt almost unnatural. Advanced equipment, experimental techniques, unlimited resources funneled into a single broken limb. Into her. Dante rarely appeared. When he did, it was never accidental. He never interrupted her therapy or her rest. He never entered her bedroom without permission. He never touched her without reason. Every interaction was measured, restrained, almost painfully controlled. And that was what unsettled her most. She expected cruelty, ownership enforced with threats or force. Instead, Dante Hollow ruled her world with absence. She found herself listening for him. The realization hit her late one night as she stood by the window, the city glowing beneath her like a circuit board. She had memorized the rhythms of the tower by then. The elevator chime, the soft footsteps of guards rotating shifts, the faint hum of systems she couldn't name. But when Dante was in the building, everything changed. The air felt charged, conversations lowered. The staff moved with sharper precision, as if gravity itself increased by a fraction. And so did she. That night, she sensed him before she saw him. Reflected in the glass. Tall, still, watching her reflection rather than her directly, as though studying a puzzle that refused to solve itself. "You're not sleeping," he said. "Neither are you." A pause. "Fair." She turned slowly, forcing herself not to flinch. Dante stood several feet away, dressed in black again, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled high enough to expose the intricate ink that wrapped his forearms. Symbols she didn't recognize. Names, maybe, or warnings. "I want to leave," Emily said. Not shouted, not pleaded, simply stated. Dante regarded her quietly. "You've stopped asking," he replied. "That doesn't mean I've stopped wanting. Wanting and surviving are different things." He stepped closer, stopping just short of invading her space. She could smell him now, that same cedar and smoke, something sharp beneath it like steel drawn slowly from a sheath. "Your husband is unraveling," Dante said. "Internal affairs opened a case yesterday. Domestic violence, excessive force. He's been suspended." Emily's breath caught. "How do you know that?" "Because I decided to let him fall." The casualness of it chilled her more than any threat could have. "You're ruining his life." "No," Dante corrected. "I'm removing the protection that allowed him to ruin yours." Silence stretched between them, taut as wire. "He deserves prison," she said. "He'll get worse." "Worse than prison." Dante's eyes darkened. "Prison ends, fear should not." Emily felt something cold settle in her stomach. "This isn't justice." "No," Dante agreed softly, "it's balance." She hugged herself instinctively, her fingers brushing the brace still supporting her arm. "What happens to me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Dante studied her face, searching for something she couldn't name. "You recover," he said. "You breathe without flinching. You sleep without listening for footsteps. You learn what it feels like to be untouched by fear. And then we see who you are without him." She laughed quietly, a brittle sound. "And if I don't like who that is?" For the first time, something like amusement flickered through Dante's expression. "Then you'll be the first person who ever disappointed me." The words weren't cruel. They were honest. Days passed, then weeks. Emily's body grew stronger. Her arm regained range, then strength. The brace disappeared, replaced by faint scars and a memory of pain that no longer controlled her. She explored more of the tower under supervision. A private gym, a library filled with books in half a dozen languages, rooms that existed for no reason other than beauty. Luxury wrapped around her like velvet-lined chains. And slowly, impossibly, she began to change. She stopped startling at sudden sounds. She stopped lowering her eyes when men spoke. She met Dante's gaze now, held it longer each time, testing the boundaries of his restraint. He noticed. One evening, during dinner in a room that could have belonged to a king, he finally spoke it aloud. "You're not afraid of me anymore." Emily set down her fork. "I am. Just not the way you want." Something dark and pleased passed through his eyes. "Good." She stood, walking toward the windows. the city glowing beneath her feet. I won't belong to you, Dante. He rose slowly, every movement controlled. You already don't, he said. That's why you're still alive. She turned back to him, heart pounding. Then what am I to you? Dante closed the distance between them, stopping close enough that she felt his presence like heat against her skin. A variable, he said quietly, an unpredictable one. His hand lifted, hovering near her face. He didn't touch her. He never did unless invited. But the space between his fingers and her skin burned hotter than contact ever could. And for the first time since she'd entered the glass tower, Emily realized the truth beneath the safety, beneath the care, beneath the gilded cage. Dante Hollow wasn't keeping her because he owned her. He was keeping her because she was the only thing in his world he couldn't control. And that terrified him, almost as much as it thrilled him. Emily chose the night carefully. She learned the tower's patterns the way prisoners learned guard rotations, which elevators required biometric clearance, which hallways were monitored live and which were only recorded when Dante was in the building and when he was. The silence had structure. The luxury had rules. Tonight Dante was gone. Not traveling, not meeting allies. Gone in a way that left the building hollow, the tension slightly looser, like a breath finally exhaled. She felt it in her bones before anyone confirmed it. That should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like opportunity. She dressed slowly, deliberately, choosing dark clothes from the wardrobe that had been curated for her without her consent. Soft fabric, flexible, no jewelry, no shoes with heels, everything practical, everything intentional. She didn't feel like herself. She felt sharper. The elevator accepted her access code without protest. That surprised her. The doors slid shut with a whisper, sealing her inside a glass column that began its silent descent. Her heart pounded harder with every passing floor, not from fear but from the terrifying possibility that this might actually work. She imagined the city at street level. Noise, chaos, strangers who didn't know her name, a cab, a bus, anywhere that wasn't wrapped in Dante Hollow's shadow. The doors opened. She stepped out and stopped. Dante stood at the end of the corridor, not blocking her path, not reaching for her, just standing there, hands loose at his sides, posture relaxed, as if he'd been waiting for an elevator that arrived exactly on schedule. The world narrowed. You planned this, he said calmly. Emily swallowed. Her first instinct was to apologize. She hated that. You said I wasn't owned. I said you weren't controlled. That distinction cut deeper than any threat. She straightened. I'm leaving. Dante studied her face, his expression unreadable. Where would you go? Anywhere else. He nodded slightly, as if considering her answer seriously. You won't make it past the lobby. That sounds like a challenge. A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. It's a warning. She stepped forward anyway. The guards appeared instantly, silent and precise, flanking the corridor without touching her. They didn't grab her arms. They didn't restrain her. They simply closed the space, turning forward into impossible. Emily's breath shook. You lied to me. Dante's eyes sharpened. No, I withheld information. About what? About how much danger you're still in. He gestured and one of the guards held up a tablet. Video footage played, grainy, night vision. Her husband's face filled the screen, eyes wild, jaw clenched as he spoke to someone off camera. I don't care who she's with, he snarled. I want her back, or I swear to God I'll burn this city down. Emily's stomach dropped. He knows where I am. He suspects. Dante's voice was even, and he's desperate. You promised me safety. I promised you protection. Those words weren't the same. The tablet disappeared. The guard stepped back, but Dante didn't move. You were never going to let me leave, Emily whispered. Dante took a single step closer. I was waiting for you to try. Her chest tightened. That hurt more than she expected. Why? Because escape tells me something honesty can't. She laughed weakly. You sound like a scientist. I am, Dante said, and you are the experiment. The words hung between them, sharp and ugly. Then his voice softened. But you're also the variable I refuse to lose. Emily looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something new beneath the control and calculation. Fear. Not of her husband. Of her leaving. I don't want this life, she said. I know. Then let me go. Not yet. The finality in his tone was absolute. The guards melted away. The corridor emptied, leaving them alone again in the gleaming silence. Dante turned toward the elevator. Come. She followed because she had no choice. Back in the tower's upper levels, the doors closed behind them with a quiet finality that felt heavier than any lock. You're angry, Dante said as they walked. I'm furious. Good, he stopped, turning to face her. Anger means you're alive again. You kidnapped me. I saved you. You caged me. I protected you. The argument spiraled, looping without resolution, until Emily finally said the thing that had been clawing at her chest since the night she woke up in silk sheets and glass walls. You don't want me safe. Dante stilled. You want me dependent. Silence. That accusation landed true enough to bruise. Dante's jaw tightened. His control cracked just enough to let something dangerous show through. I want you alive, he said quietly, and if dependence is the cost, I'll pay it. Emily stepped back, heart racing. That's not love. No, Dante agreed, it's survival. For who? He didn't answer. That night, Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the failed escape over and over. She hated herself for the disappointment that followed, hated the small, traitorous part of her that had hoped Dante would stop her sooner. That would have meant he cared in a way she could define. Instead, he cared in a way that terrified her. And yet, when sleep finally claimed her, it was his presence in the building that steadied her breathing, his shadow that kept the nightmares at bay. The next morning, a single envelope waited on her bedside table. Inside was a phone. No tracking software she could detect, no restrictions she could see. And a note written in Dante's precise hand. Trust is built on risk. I'm taking one. Emily stared at the device for a long time. She didn't know whether it was a gift or another test. And for the first time since entering the glass tower, she wondered if escape would even feel like freedom anymore. The phone stayed dark for hours. Emily didn't touch it at first. She left it where Dante had placed it, centered on the bedside table like an offering that demanded consideration rather than gratitude. The device felt heavier than it should have, not in weight but in implication. A door disguised as a gift, a test disguised as trust. She showered, dressed, ate breakfast she barely tasted. All the while, the phone waited. When she finally picked it up, her fingers trembled just enough to betray her. No lock screen message, no restrictions she could see, signal bars full, internet access unrestricted, too clean, too easy. She scrolled through contacts. Empty. Of course. Emily exhaled slowly and opened the dialer. Her mind raced through names, friends she'd drifted from, coworkers who might still care, family she hadn't spoken to since the wedding. Every option felt like a risk weighted differently, consequences branching endlessly from each possible call. She chose her sister. The line rang twice before someone answered. Emily. The sound of her name, spoken without fear or expectation, nearly broke her. It's me, she whispered. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Oh my God, Emily, where are you? Are you safe? He said you disappeared that. I'm safe, Emily interrupted quickly. I can't explain everything. I don't have much time. Where are you calling from? I don't know exactly, somewhere high. Her sister laughed shakily, relief bleeding through panic. You sound like you're joking. I'm not. Another pause. Emily imagined her sister's face tightening, concern overtaking disbelief. Emily, is he there? The question sliced clean through her chest. No, she said, not right now. You have to leave. You have to run. You can come here. I don't care what it takes. I can't, Emily said, hiding the truth of it. Not yet. Why not? Because if I do it wrong, he'll find me again. And next time he won't pretend. Her sister went quiet. Emily closed her eyes, leaning against the window, the city far below. I just needed to hear your voice, she said softly, to remember who I was before all this. You're still her sister said firmly. He doesn't get to change that. Emily almost believed her. They said goodbye quickly, too quickly. Lingering felt dangerous. When the call ended, Emily stared at the dark screen, heart hammering, grief and relief tangling until she couldn't separate them. She turned. Dante stood in the doorway. He hadn't made a sound. How long, she asked. Long enough. Anger flared. You said this was trust. It is. Then why are you here? Because trust doesn't mean absence. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him without looking away from her. Did you tell her where you are? No. Did you tell her who I am? Emily met his gaze. No. Something eased in his posture, subtle but unmistakable. Good. She laughed bitterly. You sound relieved. I am. That shouldn't make me feel better, she snapped. But it does. The admission hung between them, raw and unwanted. You could have stopped me, Emily said. You didn't. Dante moved closer, stopping just short of her personal space. I wanted to see who you'd choose. And you chose someone who loved you before you were afraid. His voice softened, not with pity but with something closer to respect. That matters. Emily shook her head. You're still manipulating me. Of course I am. The honesty startled her. I manipulate everyone, Dante continued. That's how power works. The difference is that I'm letting you see the strings. Why? Because lies rot trust faster than truth ever could. She studied him, searching for cracks for deception. All she found was intention. What happens now, she asked. Now you learn what freedom costs. Days passed, marked by something new. Joyce. Emily used the phone again, carefully. She checked the news, found articles about her husband's suspension, the investigation deepening, rumors of corruption surfacing. Dante hadn't lied. He dismantled the man systematically, peeling away his authority layer by layer. She called her sister again, then a friend, short conversations, controlled. Each call steadied her, reminded her of a world beyond glass walls and private elevators. Dante never interrupted. But he watched. Not with suspicion. With interest. One evening, Emily found him in the library, standing before a wall of books he clearly wasn't reading. He turned as she entered, eyes sharp, assessing her mood in seconds. You're changing, he said. So are you. That earned a small smile. How so? You're giving up control. Dante considered that. No, I'm redefining it. He gestured for her to sit. She did. Control isn't about possession, Emily. It's about leverage. You had none when you arrived. Now you have connections again, information, a voice outside these walls. You gave me that leverage. I allowed it. Why? Because a captive breaks eventually. An ally chooses to stay. The word landed heavy. I'm not your ally. Not yet. Silence filled the space, thick with unspoken tension. Emily leaned forward. What happens when I'm strong enough to leave? Dante didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quiet. Then I'll know I didn't save you for myself. She searched his face for deceit and found something far more dangerous. Hoping. That night, Emily dreamed of doors. Some locked, some open, some leading nowhere at all. When she woke, the phone was gone. Panic surged, sharp and immediate, until she saw it on the desk across the room, plugged into a secure terminal. Dante stood beside it. "You crossed a line today," he said calmly. Emily's pulse raced. "I didn't tell anyone about you." "No, but someone traced the signal." Her stomach dropped. "Your husband has friends who don't care about badges or laws," Dante continued. "You were careful, not careful enough." "I'm sorry." "I know." That scared her more than anger would have. "We're moving you," Dante said, "temporarily, somewhere quieter." "That sounds like punishment." "It's protection." She hesitated. "Will I still have a choice?" Dante met her gaze. "About some things." "Not this." Emily nodded slowly, understanding settling in. Trust had been offered. Risk had followed. And now consequence. As Dante led her toward the elevator, Emily realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't planning an escape anymore. She was planning survival. And for the first time, Dante Hollow wasn't the only one playing the long game. The helicopter lifted without ceremony. No dramatic countdown, no warning lights, just a sudden, smooth separation from the rooftop as the city fell away beneath them. Emily watched the glass tower shrink through the tinted window until it became just another sharp line in the skyline, indistinguishable from 100 others. She hadn't realized how much she associated safety with height until it was gone. The interior of the helicopter was quiet, insulated, the rhythmic thrum of the rotors muted to a steady vibration beneath her feet. Dante sat across from her, one hand braced casually against the frame, the other resting on his knee. He looked unchanged by the movement, by the transition, as if the world rearranged itself around him rather than the other way around. "Where are we going?" Emily asked. "Somewhere people forget to look," Dante replied. That wasn't comforting. They flew for over an hour, leaving the city's glow behind, trading steel and glass for darkness broken only by scattered lights below. Eventually, the landscape shifted. Water appeared, black and endless, then land again, rough and uneven. The helicopter descended toward a stretch of coastline so remote it felt unreal. The estate emerged slowly, carved into the rock itself. Low, wide, almost invisible from the air. Concrete and stone blended into the cliffside, lights minimal and shielded. No towers, no skyline, just the ocean crashing endlessly below, loud enough to feel even through the reinforced glass. This place didn't impress. It endured. They landed on a pad recessed into the rock. The rotors slowed, then stopped. Silence rushed in, broken only by wind and waves. Emily stepped out and felt it immediately. Isolation. The air smelled of salt and iron. The wind tugged at her clothes, cold and relentless. There was no nearby road, no visible neighbors, no sign of life beyond the guards who moved into position with quiet efficiency. "This is quieter," Dante said, watching her reaction. "Fewer variables." "And fewer exits," Emily replied. A corner of his mouth lifted. "Always." Inside, the house revealed itself as something different than the tower. Not luxury, not display. Function. Wide corridors, reinforced walls, windows thick enough to stop bullets, angled to give views outward without offering the same in return. Everything here existed for a reason, and none of those reasons involved comfort. Emily's room was smaller than before. Still beautiful, still meticulously prepared but stripped of excess. No silk sheets, no unnecessary glass, just a bed, a desk, a window facing the ocean, and a door that locked from both sides. She tested it. It locked. "You said this wasn't punishment," she said. "It's not," Dante replied from the doorway. "It's containment. For me or for you. For everyone." The first night was the worst. The sound of the ocean never stopped. It roared and crashed and breathed like something alive, something enormous circling just beyond reach. Emily lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every instinct screaming that she was farther from help than she'd ever been. And yet, no nightmares came. Morning arrived gray and sharp. Emily woke stiff but alert, her mind already cataloging details. Sightlines, guard rotations, the way staff moved through the house with minimal interaction, eyes always forward, conversations non-existent. This place was designed to be forgotten. Dante joined her for breakfast without announcement, sitting across from her at a long concrete table that felt more like an interrogation room than a dining space. "They found a fixer in Busan," he said without preamble. "One of your husband's associates. He's been moving money, weapons, information." Emily's appetite vanished. "He's escalating." "Because he's desperate," Dante continued. "Desperate men make noise. And noise attracts attention." She looked up. "Yours." "Ours." The word landed differently than he probably intended. Emily pushed her plate away. "What does this have to do with me?" "Everything." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, surveillance stills, bank transfers, names she didn't recognize, then one she did. Her husband, standing with a man whose face was blurred. "He's trading leverage for reach," Dante said, "and you are his leverage." Emily's chest tightened. "He thinks if he finds me." "If he finds you," Dante finished, "he believes the investigation collapses. Witness intimidation, emotional pressure, control restored." She stared at the photos. "I won't go back." "I know. That's why he won't stop." Silence pressed in. "You moved me because he's getting closer," Emily said. "Yes, but also because you are." She looked up sharply. "You're not just surviving anymore. You're adapting, asking the right questions, seeing patterns. That makes you visible. That makes me dangerous. That makes you useful." The word hit like a slap. Emily stood abruptly. "I'm not your asset." "No," Dante agreed calmly. "You're your own." "Then why does this feel like another cage?" "Because freedom doesn't feel safe at first." Days passed. The estate settled into a rhythm harsher than the towers but clearer. Emily trained now, not just physical therapy but self-defense, situational awareness, how to read a room in seconds, how to spot a lie before it finished forming. Dante didn't teach her directly. He watched. Always. One afternoon, after she disarmed an instructor twice her size and sent him to the mat with a move she hadn't known she was capable of, Dante dismissed the room with a gesture. "You're learning fast," he said once they were alone. "I'm motivated." He studied her, something calculating in his gaze. "Do you still want to leave?" Emily didn't answer immediately. "I want the choice," she said finally. "You're earning it." That night a storm rolled in from the sea. Wind battered the cliffs, rain slamming against reinforced windows hard enough to rattle the frames. Power flickered once, then stabilized. Emily stood by the window, watching lightning split the sky. The estate went dark. Not blackout dark, emergency dark, red lights along the corridors, low alarms pulsing softly through the walls. Dante appeared beside her almost instantly. "We have a problem," he said. Her heart raced. "My husband." "Not directly." "Then what?" "Someone else found you first." The words settled heavy and cold.